okay, what on earth is Barnaby Joyce up to? He wants the country to abandon net zero the same way that he should abandon, well, there's lots of things I could say there, isn't there? But on Monday, he introduced a private member's bill calling for net zero to be abolished. And I found this article from Ella Vines at Monash Uni, and basically it's on the conversation, and it's broken down the 4 central claims and how they don't stack up. So we're going to go through them. Firstly, he says that Australia going net zero won't do anything to address global climate change, which is just untrue. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has made it pretty clear in their summary for policymakers that every tonne of CO2 emissions adds to global warming. So I mean, that makes it pretty clear, right? And also to make that clear, it doesn't matter where in the world it's emitted from. And just a reminder that Australia has also agreed with nearly every other country on the planet to limit the average global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius as part of the Paris Agreement. Vines also said that so far these nations haven't managed to stop global warming as such, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. Vines also said that so far all these nations haven't managed to stop warming, but that doesn't mean that we should give up. It's a bit of a quitter's attitude, right? Especially since, and this ties in with Barnaby's false claim number 2, that global support for net zero is shrinking. Well, a new ruling from the International Court of Justice just the other week confirms that nations must act to prevent climate harm. And as of June 2024, 107 countries that cover about 82% of the planet's emissions have made net zero pledges. Now that adds pressure on countries like Australia to rethink, new fossil fuel approvals, like the Northwest Shelf, for example. Now, Barnaby's third claim. And his third claim is that net zero is a global security threat. He basically says it would be treacherous for Australia's security and will inflame our incapacity to be a military power, which I don't really understand, but I guess I see what he's trying to say. But Vines cited this paper here, which basically confirmed that the opposite is true. And in fact, this paper actually found findings consistently show a significant positive association between greenhouse gas emissions and military conflicts. Now, that report didn't focus on real-life case studies. Instead, it used large-scale statistical analysis across 123 developing countries from 1995 to 2020. But it's not hard to find real-life examples where climate change was a contributing factor in a conflict. Most notably the conflict in Darfur, Sudan, which former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said in 2007 began as an ecological crisis arising at least in part from climate change. So that paper recommended that to prevent conflict, wealthy nations should support developing nations in building resilience against climate change and advocate for collaborative efforts to mitigate its adverse effects on global security. This is all quite interesting actually, and if you want to read more yourself, just Google something along the lines of like climate change and the future of war, and it's not something that you think about every day. And I mean, like, it's all kind of getting proven as well. I mean, just 2 months ago, Beijing will invest almost $2 million in island countries' clean energy fisheries, oceans, low carbon infrastructure, and tourism sectors. And the Australian Army's own research even says that the ADF will increasingly engage in wars due to the escalating climate crisis. Now, the research says that it's not climate change that's causing war by itself, but it does create the conditions that make war more likely, especially in fragile or failing states. There's also this part here which says that the ADF should expect to take a larger role domestically as natural disasters become more severe and more common. And who bears the brunt of climate disasters in Australia? Regional Australians. I mean, if you just look at this year, you've got flooding on the mid-north coast, drought in Victoria, the algal bloom in South Australia, not to mention the flooding and the tropical lows and the cyclones up in Queensland. And all of that ties in with Barnaby's false claim number 4, that net zero is bad for regional Australia. And if you'd seen that documentary from the fossil fuel funded right-wing think tank, the Institute of Public Affairs, you might think that that is the case. However, a survey conducted for Farmers for Climate Action found that support for renewable energy developments sat at around 73% for people connected to the farming industry. Now, Vines also cited this article here. So this is from Professor Andrew Blackers at ANU, and basically he calculated that to decarbonise Australia, it would take just 1,200 square kilometres. And that 1,200 square kilometres is bugger all when, as he puts it, the area devoted to agriculture, which is about 3,500 times larger at 4.2 million square kilometres. And he also says that the area of land that would be taken away from agriculture works out to about 45 square metres per person, or about the size of a large living room. Okay, so where does this leave us? On one hand, you've got one of the most notable coalition members, a former Deputy Prime Minister, stoking the climate debate for the Nationals, and this has the potential to drive away the climate-conscious voters who might be 50-50 on their party support to other candidates. And this also happened. Pauline Hanson yesterday moved a motion to scrap net zero in the Senate, which overwhelmingly got voted down. Similar to Barnaby and the Nationals, by moving a similar scrap net zero motion, Hanson and One Nation are trying to entice that pool of more hardline conservative Liberal voters into their fold. Oh, and the state branches of the Liberal Party are also at various speeds banding together to put pressure on the party to scrap net zero. WA over the weekend, South Australia in June, and Queensland are set to take a vote next month. This is all the type of internal politics that could, depending on which faction gets their way, end up making the LNP abandon its commitment to net zero as a policy. So what would you do if you were Susan Lee? Would you drink the Kool-Aid and have a no net zero policy, or would you hold your ground and have a policy that will make them competitive at the next election?